Welcome back to Love for a Lifetime's Authentic Marriage Podcast. Today, you're just getting Shawn and I. So, I'm Chris, this is Shawn, and it's just going to be the two of us today. And as the husbands and guys, we wanted to talk a little bit about this concept about pride. And first, I think we want to start out saying, look, if you think about where we are today, as men and husbands, what we're taught, and this goes back hundreds, thousands of years, right? Men are taught to be they're taught to be the providers. They're taught to be hunters, or they're workers. They're out there. They're the protectors of their family. So all these concepts leads them to say, "I need to be strong. I need to be strong for my family." But the risk you have with that is that when you start to believe too much in your strength and depend too much on your strength, you have this issue of pride.
Yeah. Pride becomes your identity.
Pride becomes your identity. So we want to talk a little bit about pride, but before we go any deeper, we want to set this up with a story from the Bible out of 2 Kings 5 about Naaman. Now, Naaman was a powerful Syrian general, but he had leprosy, which was acceptable in that army because they valued his strength and his leadership.
Yeah, he was known as a fierce warrior, and he had strength.
He had strength, so his value was in that. So the backstory of this is, so he's general in the Syrian army. He has leprosy. They've captured a young girl from Israel, and she's been put in as a servant in his wife's house. And the little girl tells him, "Hey, there is a prophet in Israel that could heal Naaman." And he finds out, and he goes with his armies and gold and silver to see the prophet Elijah in Israel. So I'm going to pick up here and read 2 Kings 5. I'm going to read 9 through 12, just a little bit. And it says, "So Naaman came with his horses and chariots and stood at the door of Elijah's house. And Elijah sent a messenger to him, saying, 'Go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh shall be restored, and you shall be clean.' But Naaman was angry and went away, saying, 'Behold, I thought he would surely come out to me, stand and call upon the name of the Lord his God, and wave his hand over the place, and cure my leprosy. Are not Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be clean?' So he turned and went away in rage." So there he went looking for a cure. He was told the cure, but it wasn't
the way he expected it to be. He wasn't treated with the respect he demands. Elisha didn't even come out to the door. He sent a servant or a messenger.
Yeah.
So this is a general who's used to being served, used to being the center of attention, used to having everybody bow to whatever he says. And the prophet from Israel wouldn't even come out to greet him.
And he took offense. He took a great offense to that.
Yeah. And made excuses, and these rivers are better. Why would I bathe in this dirty river? It just didn't meet his expectations. Yeah. And I think that's where pride comes from a lot of times. We expect things to be done a certain way, and if they're not, that person's wrong. Pride's about being right. And I think in his mind, he was right. Those rivers were probably cleaner.
Yeah. And that wasn't the point, though, right? The point was he had to be obedient and listen.
Yeah, he had to change. What the cool part of this story too, as it goes on, his servant said, the prophet Elisha gave you the cure. Why not go do what he told you to do? Do you want to live with this leprosy, or do you want to be cleaned? Yeah. Why not go do what he told you to do? And so then he came back and then he did it. And he dipped 7 times in the river, and he came up on the 7th time, which means he went 1 through 6, and then finally on the 7th, he was completely clean. And so he had to humble himself. He turned around and he humbled himself. And I think we as men struggle with that. And we were talking about it earlier, is that men have a propensity for pride because of the way we're raised. And, a lot of men don't cry, don't show weakness, don't show fear, don't do any of those things. Ultimately, don't be vulnerable. And it's just really driven home into us. I remember growing up, and it was like, be honorable, don't start a fight. But if somebody hits you, you hit them back twice as hard, right? And so...
That's right, you don't start it, but you're going to finish it.
Right. And so we take on that strength. And I've battled with pride in my life, a toughness, a strength, and I wore that as an identity. And it makes relationships hard. And obviously we're doing a marriage podcast, and so we want to relate that back to what does this pride do in your relationship with your spouse?
Yeah, and I think it's funny. I look at this story about Naaman, and he's upset because they don't greet him at the door, and there's not fanfare and reception and all these things. And I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I can think back probably 15 years ago. I can remember coming home from work one day, coming into the house, and I'm expecting that the kids are going to come greet me and pay me respect, and Brooke's going to come see me. And I remember coming in the door and this chaos at the house, and I'm trying to get their attention because I had some news to tell them or something, and they just didn't care that I was home. And then I had something to tell them, something I wanted to talk about, because they were busy with the things they were doing. And I remember I actually said out loud something along the lines of, "My goodness, they'd never treat me this way at work." And Brooke heard it. She didn't hear whatever else I was saying, but she heard that, and she said, "Oh, aren't you high and mighty tonight?"
Well, that leads us back to the joke that you told us.
That leads us back to this thing you found earlier. This quote, this is exactly the same thing. It says, "Pride makes you powerful in the boardroom, but lonely in the bedroom."
Yeah.
So I was lonely in the bedroom that night, that's for sure.
And we'll take this back to the sex talk here eventually. But we're gonna stick with pride, and I think we were talking about why men get that, and we're in a performance culture. Mm-hmm. We have to provide. We have to perform. In sports, if you play sports, we have to dominate, and we take this into our relationships, and that's where we get into a lot of trouble, because we justify our defensiveness when, like, say Lauren would come up to me and say, "Hey, I really want to talk to you about this," and I would feel attacked, I would feel disrespected, and I would feel like she didn't approach me the right way. So ultimately you get defensive. Yeah. And what could have just been a comment or a discussion becomes a full-blown argument. Not because of her, but because of my defensiveness, my pride, my desire to be right. And a lot of guys have really, they'll use their intellect as a justification for their pride as well. I remember, this isn't to say I'm smart, I used to be smart before.
Still smart.
Before I got married. And then, but I remember I could take a fight or take a discussion, and I could flip it around to where the person that came to me with a problem would leave feeling like they were in the wrong all the time.
Yeah, and think about how wrong that is in marriage, just like you talked about, same thing. Sometimes you say, "Oh, I want to be right," or "I want to get the last word," and you totally lose sight of the fact that, hey, look, two become one, and we're a partnership. Right? Yeah. In marriage, we're a partnership, and when you get into that place of being prideful and wanting to be right, wanting to have your way, you totally lose that concept of partnership, because you're so focused on yourself and your own needs and being right.
Yeah. There was a Bible verse that stood out to me on James 4:6, and it said, "God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble." It didn't say he ignored the pride. It didn't say he tolerated the pride. It said he opposed. And if you look at that word opposed, God is against. And when you start to look at that, and you look at how Jesus was when he came, your favorite verse is in Philippians, and it talks about Jesus came not to be served, but to serve. And he humbled himself before the people. He came as God in human form and humbled himself to the point of death. And I think when we look at this pride, we start to say, if we want to become more like Jesus, if that's what our goal is, if we're walking that walk, Jesus was really humble. He put others before himself. He healed. He spoke truth. He did it in love. And he cared truly and deeply about people. We have to be able to do that for our spouse, the one person that we married to spend the rest of our life with. Yeah. And I think if you realize it in your marriage, if you're being prideful, you're always winning the fights, you're hurting your marriage, and God opposes that. And so for me, that hit me pretty hard, is I have to really look at myself and say, how can I be humble? How can I understand what she's saying without feeling attacked? And in a marriage, it becomes kind of a give and take. She had to learn to come to me and say, "Hey, can I talk to you about this now?" And if I was not in that mood, and I would say, "No, not right now," because I would have to prepare my mind. But that's very humbling to do that, to know, okay, she's coming to me with something hard. I'm really not in a good mood right now. Let me take a moment to reflect, even get in the Word, even pray before I come back, so that I can get rid of all of my defensiveness and all of the offense that you can take to somebody coming at you.
I think the other thing that's interesting in that, in pride, is that similar to the story here in 2 Kings 5, is that sometimes we don't accept help because we're too prideful, right? Oh, I'm gonna figure this out on my own. I'm gonna fix this on my own, and we'll spend hours or days and even weeks trying to fix something. When the reality is, we just need to humble ourselves and go ask for help. In our marriage, it's, hey, we need to go ask our help. We need to go ask our wives and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. Maybe I'm struggling with an addiction. Maybe I'm struggling with a sin I can't break free of. Well, I know that she wants to help me. Maybe I'm too prideful to expose her to her, but I know that she would want to help me, and I have to break that down and get past my own pride, my own sinful nature, to seek that help.
And sometimes it's hard in that moment, right? In that moment, you don't want to hear it.
You don't.
Sometimes you don't want to hear the correction, but we have to learn that they're not out to harm us. We're one together. They want to protect the marriage itself. We had an example a couple of weeks ago where I was really frustrated just with everything, the kids and work and everything. And I was just wearing it. And when I wear it, everybody around me feels it.
Yeah. And they know. They can see it. At least in my house, they can see it when I wear it.
Well, it's all over you, right?
Yep.
And Lauren told me, what are you listening to all day? And I said, I'm listening to talk radio, right? I'm listening to the news. I'm listening to that stuff.
I got to stay up on current events,
exactly.
Right?
And I would justify it. Well, I need to hear this. I need to know what's going on. I need to protect us. I need to do these things. And she would say, can you maybe just get into the Word, or listen to a podcast, or listen to somebody that will put your heart in the right place. And I was like, you don't know what you're talking about, right? And it took me a second, and I realized she's really trying to protect me and protect our family. And so I started to do it. And I had to humble myself to do it, because it has become a habit. Every day I look forward to whatever news source or whatever it is. So I started to listen to podcasts, and I started to listen to worship music, and I started to do that. And in 2 weeks, I haven't listened to the news at all. And our home life is completely better. Like, I'm not as frustrated with the kids. And, they're 2 and 5, so they're frustrating in general, right? At this age. But
they don't think like you at 2 and 5.
Right. So, I thank her for having the ability and the strength to tell me, I see something wrong in you. I see something hurting you. And ultimately, I had to humble myself and say, you know what, you're right. I feel it. I know it. I need to do something about it.
Yeah. I think we could probably talk a lot more about this topic of pride, and I'm sure Brooke and Lauren maybe like to join us sometime, but I think we'll wrap it up for today. But I think that story is a really good one, because like Naaman in 2 Kings 5, he almost missed his healing. He almost missed his blessing because of his pride. And that story I think you just told is an example of, boy, because of your pride, you almost missed that advice from Lauren that made your home more peaceful. Yeah. And I think as you said earlier, we're highly at risk as husbands, as men, of being too prideful in our marriages. And it's something we've got to recognize, that, hey, the marriage is a partnership. We need to be humble in that relationship. We don't need to be prideful in it. Yeah. So I think with that, maybe you want to pray us out?
Yeah. God, thank you so much for just the wisdom that you have just been imparting with us. I know that we have both probably dealt with pride. I know I personally have. I know it's something that I struggle with, but the more and more I open my heart to you, the more and more I know that you want to change it. It is not your will for us to be prideful. It is not your will for us to walk in this frustration and this life of struggle. You want us to be peaceful and joyful. And removing pride and becoming humble is one of the best ways we can do that. So thank you for your word. Thank you for opposing pride, because that caused me, in essence, to say, I don't ever want to be something that God is opposed to. So Lord, thank you for this ministry. Thank you for the marriages. Thank you for the people who are listening to this. Lord, I just pray that something that was said today would open somebody's heart and their eyes to want to get into your word and see what you say about this. And Lord, that ultimately marriages are restored, your glory is shown, and that our marriages, anybody's marriage, can reflect the love you have for people in the way that we love and cherish our spouse. We thank you for all that you do. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Well, Thanks again for listening. I'm Chris. He's Shawn. We're here with the Authentic Marriage Podcast for Love for a Lifetime, and we look forward to seeing you next time.